All right, a quick introduction from me. My name is Ryan Dings. I am the president and on the board of directors of Climate Haven. We are a platform for entrepreneurs building breakthrough solutions in energy and climate resilience. Climate Haven is based right here in New Haven, Connecticut, and we serve an amazing community of Yale entrepreneurs that are looking to bring breakthrough solutions from lab to market. So speaking of those entrepreneurs, if you are an entrepreneur and you are looking to bring your solution to the market, here are the words that you never want to hear. You never want to hear somebody say to you, especially if it's an investor, you are a solution in search of a problem. Those are the words you don't want to hear. So what better way to find the critical problems that we should be addressing today than by bringing on experts and asking them to pitch the problem to us. So welcome to Experts Pitch the Problem. We've got 5 experts today who we've each asked to identify a problem that they think is critical to a clean energy transition. They're going to come up, each one of them, and they're going to give a 5-minute presentation to you. And then you, the audience, are going to have an opportunity to ask a couple questions to each one of our experts. It's a great group. Looking forward to hearing from all of them. And without further ado, let's bring up our first expert. So I would like to welcome to the stage from Avangrid, Adam Hellman, who is going to talk to us about emergency operations. Adam.
All right, do we have a clicker? Am I missing? Is it over there, Steve? Forward, back, forward, back. All right, good. That works. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adam Hellman. I am the Senior Director for Emergency Management for Avangrid. What that means is myself and my team's job is to make sure that Avangrid is prepared to respond to any emergency that may face our customers, our company, and our ability to deliver energy to our customers. And here today to talk about the delivery of energy and how we respond. And what I love about working in the utility industry is that it is relatable, right? Energy is personal to all of us. We are all customers in one way or another of energy, and we use it every day. And now more than ever, our customers and ourselves rely on uninterrupted or reliable delivery of energy to go about our day-to-day lives. Whether you or your loved ones rely on life-sustaining equipment on a day-to-day basis, or you're just having a busy day and you're getting home and you're looking forward to binging the next couple of episodes of Game of Thrones or whatever show you're binging at the time, or you're like myself and have a 2-year-old son who his biggest, most important thing in their life is rewatching Finding Nemo for the 75th time this week. And so even a momentary interruption of energy delivery impacts us heavily. And so our job in emergency management and our company's job is to limit those interruptions as much as we can. Unfortunately, we live in the Northeast, which is pretty much smack dab in every possible weather pattern we can have, right? Sometimes it's too cold, sometimes it's too hot, sometimes it's too dry, sometimes it rains too much. Or like we just were dealing with these past few days, sometimes it's too windy. And all of those weather patterns impact our ability to continue delivery of energy. And so as we move forward in time here, we're going to have to continue to improve how we respond, right? And improve how we design our systems to limit impacts, to respond to emergencies as quickly as possible and restore services as quickly as possible. And so that's really the problem that I'm bringing to you today. And the experts that were just on here talking about novel and innovative ways to generate energy is phenomenal. Other clean energy delivery mechanisms as well. Our focus is making sure that we can deliver it consistently. And so that's really the problem that I'm here to talk to you about today. And how we do that at Avangrid and utilities generally is our ability in minimizing the impact to customers begins well before weather is predicted, right? It starts going into how are we designing our systems through grid hardening technologies and investments to limit the possibility of outages through things like tree wire or more robust conductors, more robust poles and transformers, and really looking at how we design our systems to be more resilient to weather, to be more healing, more able to withstand impacts of severe weather. Vegetation management is incredibly important to us, right? 50% of our outages across our company come about because of vegetation contact. And so how we manage the trees and the vegetation around our lines play a huge impact on how storms will impact our ability to deliver energy. And so working with our regulatory partners to continue to manage that vegetation on an annual basis to limit our impact when weather does strike us. Lastly here, what are our other technological advancements? All of us have dealt with outages, I'm sure, where power drops off momentarily, comes back on a few seconds later, right? That's technology advancements that are limiting your impact from that outage, right? Those are reclosers and self-healing technologies in our grid that are allowing the grid to sectionalize itself to minimize the amount of impact, the impacted customers based on the fault that just happened, right? Tree falls down, takes down a line. The system starts to detect where is that outage, starts to narrow that in and re-energize customers that can be re-energized due to those investments. And so that's one of our technological innovations to limit the impact of customers as we are dealing with severe weather continuously and are going to continue into the future. As we continue on with when weather starts to get forecasted, right? So my team is always looking into the future, right? My team is always looking 5, 7, 14 days into the future to figure out what is possibly coming down the path to impact our customers and what actions should we start to take. So the ability to forecast weather and forecast weather more accurately is critical to the company being able to make the proper pre-staging and preemptive decisions to restore power as quickly as possible after impact. And so this is where artificial intelligence starts to come into play here and our ability to improve weather forecasting, right? We all sort of take for granted that when you can open up an app on your phone and figure out it's going to rain tomorrow, and take for granted the incredible amount of mathematics and physics that go into being able to know that it's going to rain tomorrow. And we're pushing that boundary further and further out. We're pushing that boundary to 3, 5, 7 days and getting a better understanding of severe weather. And that allows us to make better decisions preemptively before weather hits, to make pre-staging decisions or resourcing decisions. And you've all probably seen this, right? You've seen bucket trucks sitting in a parking lot of a Walmart or a Home Depot or a Lowe's, sitting by and waiting for weather to hit, right? That's a real life sort of visual indication of utilities looking at the weather forecast, looking at using other tools that they have to make resourcing decisions prior to impact. And that allows us to take those crews, put them to work immediately after the weather to get restoration going as quickly as possible. The other tool we use for that is outage prediction modeling. And so what outage prediction modeling is, it's an AI or machine learning tool that takes the weather forecast and translates that into what does that actually mean for us? All right, what does 45-mile-an-hour winds? I'll give you a real life example because we just demobed at about 9 o'clock this morning due to the winds that came through over the past couple of days. When we look at a forecast and say the National Weather Service is predicting we're going to get 55-mile-an-hour wind gusts across much of upstate New York and New England. What does that actually mean for us, right? What does that mean as far as outages go, as far as trees that are going to come down? And we use outage prediction modeling to model that and determine what that level of impact will end up being. This is an area of ongoing innovation and research that Avangrid is investing in, as well as other utilities, but through, and I don't want to start a turf battle here, but through what's called an IUCRC, or an Industry University Collaborative Research Center, called WISER, the Center for Weather Innovation, Smart Energy, and Resilience. I always forget that acronym, but through direct research with higher education on how to improve those models, how to make those more accurate, how to give us more information before impact to make the right decisions. And so that's an area of active research to improve how utilities can respond to it. And then lastly, when weather actually impacts us, how do we manage that response efficiently to put the resources to use efficiently to restore power as quickly as we can? And we do that through response coordination, right? So for every 100 crews or 1,000 crews you see out on the streets, our heroes, our line workers who are out there in the elements, putting poles back in the ground, putting lines back up, there are hundreds of employees behind the scenes in offices managing those crews, making sure that they have the right projects to work on next, the right outages to work on next, making sure that they're being supported. They have a warm bed to sleep in when they're off of shift. They have meals to eat, making sure that we are communicating properly to our customers. All of that critical behind the scenes work is something that my team manages at Avangrid and emergency managers manage throughout the industry. But it's a critical component to making sure that we are responding efficiently, we are communicating efficiently, and ultimately at the end of the day, we're restoring services efficiently and safely as we can. And lastly, communication is critically important. We know that from the very beginning, right? I know as customers, as energy customers, during a storm, during an outage, you hate opening up the app, looking at your ETR, your restoration time, and it says assessing, right? And it says assessing for 12 hours or 18 hours or 24 hours. And all you want is some information to know what decisions you should be making for your family. And we know that, right? We know if you were a fly on the wall in our response organization, in our coordination calls, the first thing you would hear beyond safety and restoration is communication, right? We need to start communicating out to our customers as quickly as we can about about when their power is going to be back on. And that's a harder question to answer, especially during a catastrophic incident. You don't know right away what the impact is going to be. You don't know when you're going to get around to restoring every last customer. But we can utilize technology like smart meters to understand outages more quickly. We use damage assessment, and that's aerial damage assessment using drones, using fixed-wing assets, as well as sending individuals out to start to categorize the damage to understand what our work plan is to restore power. So all of that goes into how we communicate to our customers so that they can make the proper decisions that they can. So in closing, because I'm running out of time here, severe weather is something that we deal with in the Northeast. It is something that we're going to deal with more and more into the future with things like climate change and other factors. And so we at Avangrid and the utility industry are always trying to innovate on how we can do that better, how we can do that more efficiently, how we can utilize our resources more efficiently, and how we can communicate better. And so that's the problem I've brought to all of you, but I'm happy to answer any of the questions you have. We got competing mics.
Go for it, Tom. So if we have an innovative idea, how do we get in front of you?
Yeah, so I think it's a great idea. I mean, I think our innovations center, who's actually here, Lauren, who's actually sitting right next to you, is a great person to go to. But we are always looking for collaborative partners, and we spend a lot of times through our innovations department to find those areas, start the conversations, and see where it goes. Right. I was actually just talking to Lauren. I mean, from my perspective, I'm an operator, so I'm dealing with, so what I'm looking for from innovation and research are, what are the tools that are going to help me tomorrow do this better, right? And so that's, I have a narrow focus to be, on the innovation or on the operations side, so that tends to be what I'm looking at. But start a conversation and we'll see where it goes. Lauren.
Thank you. Hi, thank you. I'm wondering about kind of fundamental questions of grid structure and how that's playing in here, or whether you're thinking of it more through a maintenance lens. Like, yeah. I'm thinking of case studies like Puerto Rico with very centralized grids where they're dealing with natural disasters. And if you knock out one part of the grid, a lot of it goes down. And some people think that the solution to that is more distributed energy. Are you thinking about that for this region as well? Or is it more about kind of retaining the structure that we have, but having more innovative maintenance approaches?
Yeah, it's definitely all of the above, but I think in different ways, right? So there's always development, system planning, and investments in redesigning the grid and restructuring it, right? It's not a surprise that our electric grid in this country, especially in this region and ours, is aging, right? It's been around for many decades. There's always investment in trying to update it. When people who are smarter than I, who have engineering degrees and know this stuff better than I do, but will always look at how, when they're redesigning a grid, how can they make that section more resilient, right? How can you design in areas to tie in and get around faults and re-energize customers? And so when we are doing investment and redesign, they are looking at it from a hardening perspective, from a resiliency perspective. And then, when something happens, right, that's when my team will step in and really get into the actual operations of restoring it.
We'll move on to the next presentation.
Oh, okay. So much. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome, Adam, thank you. I can confirm my daughters, when the power goes out, they try to call 911. So this is a critical issue. All right, next up, equally important topic, I would like to welcome from the Connecticut Green Bank, talking about school bus fleet electrification in Connecticut, Sarah Harari. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you, Ryan. So my name is Sarah Harari. I am the Director of Innovation at the Connecticut Green Bank. We're a quasi-public agency here in Connecticut that's focused on deploying green technology. Since 2011, we've supported the deployment of over $3 billion into the Connecticut green economy. And we're leveraging about $7 of private funding for every public dollar that we put into those projects. I'm here today to talk to you about a very specific problem, which is school buses. Every morning here in Connecticut, over 300,000 students wait to get on a school bus, and when that school bus pulls up, they're standing up in line behind tailpipes, breathing in exhaust that affects their health and their ability to learn once they get to school. That's what I'm here today to get your help to change. In 2011, we passed the Connecticut Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act establishes an ambitious goal to transition all of the school buses in Connecticut to electric by 2040, with even nearer-term targets for environmental justice communities. But to date, we've seen very few communities take the next steps and actually get those buses deployed. That's because there are a lot of barriers to deploying electric school buses, whether that is the higher upfront costs, funding uncertainty from state and federal grants, or the logistical challenges that have slowed adoption. For a sense of what we're dealing with, some districts here in Connecticut depot their school buses in unpaved lots. They basically stack as many buses as they can get into the cheapest land that's available to be leased. Those lots might not even have an electrical service, and so before you can get those buses ready to be electrified, you need to trench. You need to rethink how those buses move around, get through, make sure there's enough chargers for them all. All of that needs to happen before you can plug a single bus in. But we've been working on this problem for the last 2 years. So good news, we fixed it. The Green Bank has issued new financing offerings where school districts and school bus operators can come to us to get financing for the buses, the chargers, and the infrastructure required to plug those in. We also have been working very hard with our colleagues over at the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, as well as state legislators, to make sure that there is state grant funding available in a clear and comprehensive way that school districts can go after when they know what they want. We've also gotten engaged at the regulatory level, working with our associates over at the Public Utilities and Regulatory Authority, as well as our colleagues at the utilities, to make sure that there's really a lot more clarity around what the electric rates will be for those buses and how does it be fair to both the operators that are plugging in and to all the ratepayers that are part of the system. Finally, this fall, we launched the Fleet Electrification Accelerator. This is a program that is free to Connecticut distressed municipalities that lets them come to us and helps them get from where they are now to a fully electrified fleet plan, and helps them understand what are the different phases, what are the different steps that they're going to take to need to get there. Okay, I guess when I take a step back, in fact, we've only solved some of it. So that's what brings me here today. I want to talk about two of the outstanding problems. There's still a lot of creativity that's needed on this. But the first problem I want to talk to you about is a technology problem. So school districts are very used to thinking about school buses as a transportation asset. How do you get kids from one point to another? But with electric school buses, they need a paradigm shift in how they're thinking about it. These are going to become grid assets, not just transportation assets. And there's a lot of risk if you're doing this the wrong way. If a school district with 30 buses drops off all the kids at the end of the school day, comes back at 3 p.m. and plugs into the grid, they could be faced with thousands of dollars in demand charges because that's when the rest of the grid is peaking. And if they instead are able to switch to an overnight solution and perhaps use those batteries, the leftover charges in them, to generate revenue through a V2G structure, that opens up a whole new way for them to think about these assets. However, that's not the school district's forte. It's not the school bus operator's forte. We need operators that are in here thinking about how do you de-risk using these assets as basically batteries on wheels. The second challenge I'm here to pitch you on is a communication problem. Now, unfortunately, school buses, along with the rest of the electric vehicle fleet, have become politicized in the recent years. And we need to take the conversation on these back to local impacts. Parents are less concerned about kilowatts and more concerned about whether their kids are getting to school safely. So we need to reframe this transition in those terms. We need to talk about the health, the reliability, and the local impacts of the transition. We need to work with parents and teachers, the PTA, and the school board to help them understand why we're talking about this. We need to work with the operators, the transportation coordinators, and the people that are doing maintenance in order to help them understand what this transition means for them. I don't want this to just be a top-down, the state has a goal for all of these buses to transition. I want it to be from the bottom up, where the community is saying, we want this solution that's better for us. How can we make that happen? So, here's my last pitch to you. Connecticut might be small, but we can lead big. And if we get it right here, it can ripple across the country. Imagine 26 million children riding emissions-free buses. That's the impact we can make together. Who's ready to get on the bus with me? While we're taking the first question, Kevin Moss and Larry Campana, if you can raise your hands. If you have ideas afterwards, come find one of the three of us because we would love to work with you on any part of this problem. If you're here in Connecticut and you want your town to get electric school buses, come talk to one of the three of us and we'll get them in that program. Go ahead.
Hi. I'm wondering if the school districts are open to not owning the buses, if a third party could own, maintain, and operate the buses, or at least the school district can drive them, but sort of just lease them or pay a fixed payment.
Here in Connecticut, we have about 7,500 school buses, and of those, 90% are actually already owned and operated by third parties. Whether that is an operator that's just focused on a single school district, like that in Hartford, or whether it's like that in New Haven. Here we have First Student, which is a national operator. That's actually the paradigm here in Connecticut. And it is working, our financing tends to be working with the operators that are more sophisticated capital partners to figure out how they can take on our debt. Yes.
Hi, Sarah. Fascinating topic. I'm Spencer. I'm with the School of Management and School of the Environment. I love how you started out with every dollar that Green Bank spends, you attract $7 of private capital. And so what I'm left wondering, and I'm curious how you're thinking about, is where those $7 of private capital are going to come from for financing these school buses, and what additional financial partners you think you need to make this transition happen.
That's a great question. We are in the process of doing that. So it tends to be when we are starting a new market, we're using primarily Green Bank capital, and we are taking the first risk. And then after that market is more mature, then we start to bring in other capital partners. You may know that the Green Bank does we do crowdfunding every quarter and issue parts of our portfolio to the market to invite participation into our projects. We're hoping to be able to do that with school buses and other specific projects in the future to allow those communities that are actively getting the benefits of the technology to be getting the benefits of the investment as well. I would hope that in the future we're also seeing interest. We're planning to issue a bond to the broader market using our ability to issue bonds as part of a state entity to participate in this market as well. Okay, thanks guys.
Sarah, that was amazing. I can say we've got electric school buses in our town, and it has been amazing this year to watch the emissions drop to zero and the screaming dramatically increase because you can't hear the buses. And so we're yelling at our kids every morning to get out the door because the bus is out front. So it's crazy. They're a really, really amazing program. Thank you so much, Sarah. All right, next up, on an equally important topic, I'd love to welcome a dear friend and one of the leaders in our climate tech community, Konstantin Drakonikis from Kinetic Innovations, here to talk about how venture-backed innovation can address affordable energy. Konstantin, welcome.
Hey, everybody. Thanks very much, Ryan. Thanks, Yale, for hosting this again. So, as Ryan mentioned, my name is Konstantin Drakonikis. I'm the managing director of the Climate Tech Fund at Connecticut Innovations, which you can think of as the state of Connecticut's strategic venture capital arm. We've been investing and making direct equity and debt, venture debt investments into startups for the last 30 years, since the late 80s. And we've grown our portfolio to about 500 million assets under management today. So as a part of that, I manage a $100 million climate tech fund, which was launched about 3 years ago by an initiative of Governor Lamont to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. Lofty goal with the main driver focus on early stage technology, novel technologies that can address these problems, these climate change problems. But it's not just greenhouse gas emissions that we're after. We're after other issues within sustainability and impact that can really help achieve a more greener, sustainable economy. So what I do from a day-to-day is I look at new companies that, as I mentioned, have novel technologies to solve many of these problems. But here today, I'm going to talk about our grid tech portfolio that are trying to go after some of these major issues. And really, I'm here just to sort of complain to you about how difficult the market is as it pertains to adopting, scaling, and having our grid tech solutions really be adopted by the general grid and the market. So the main pain point, as I mentioned, is the affordability of rates to a large degree. What that does is it negatively impacts my ability to attract companies to come here to the state of Connecticut to grow and scale. It doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have the solutions per se at an early stage level and that we might not be piloting them. But the big problem here is having a complicated framework that is our grid system, being able to be flexible and nimble enough to adopt these technologies and scale them quickly so that we can actually see the solutions be achieved. So it's really hard for me to see some of this stuff. As most of us know, if you live here in Connecticut, we pay some of the highest rates in the country, second only to Hawaii, I believe. And we import a lot of our fuel, a lot of our supply. So in effect, Connecticut can be almost viewed as an island, right? So it's difficult to have lower electricity and rates if your supply is constricted or congested in any way, shape, or form, and you don't have access to a lot of newer power generation that can come on in a timely way to address a lot of base load issues. So this graph basically tells the story about how electricity rates have risen over the last 20 years, almost 3x, and in a very volatile way. And we did try to address this problem to some degree by deregulating our markets. And our utilities here today are very innovative folks who are trying to deploy a lot of these solutions. But again, they're working within a constrained, aging grid, which doesn't make life very easy for them in terms of trying to deploy things that are rather novel and may not necessarily integrate very easily. And so that's a problem, but it's also an opportunity for some of our technology, grid tech companies to address. And again, part of my job at Connecticut Innovations is not only to identify and invest in these companies that can provide a financial return to us, but it's also to grow those companies and create as many jobs here in Connecticut as we can. And so by having these higher rates, it makes those companies think twice about setting up a manufacturing facility, for example. And then sort of underpinning a lot of this sort of demand or future demand issue are the growing needs for compute power, right? And needs of via data centers, for example, which will require quite a bit of power, right? And further sort of create pressures on our rates. So some of the solutions, though, however, that we have been investing in quite actively over the last 3 years, Connecticut Innovations has invested in 6 companies. And they really, range the gamut from EV charging, such as AmpUp, which has a very novel demand response attribute to its product. It's actually a software-based product. It's not a hardware one. Butterfly, which is a really well-known sort of superstar in the space, that it's an energy efficiency as a service model. So it's a unique business model that is really changing things up in terms of speed of adoption of new technologies. Noteworthy AI, actually, I believe Mike might be working with these guys, is a company that's developed a way to sort of ground truth and help grid maintenance and repair be identified and implemented more quickly for a more reliant and robust grid, especially around emergency response. Round Trip EV is a company that's addressing, again, through a service-based model, bringing small to medium-sized electrified refuse trucks to market. And Enertiv is a building intelligence company, and Tantalus is actually a public company now that has a smart meter technology. So all of these are addressing high-level problems and can be integrated, again, into our grid. But the issue is really growing or having these technologies be adopted in a scalable way. So it's not just CI who's addressing this. There's a much broader effort afoot here in the state, which has brought together a number of stakeholders, including our sister agencies, Green Bank, and our utilities, all under the umbrella of the Public Utility Regulatory Agency. And it's a program called the Innovation Energy Solutions Program. It's a $25 million per year program over 5 years, and we're going into our 4th year now, where we've invested in, I believe, over 20 companies. Again, all addressing our grid issues to provide a more modern, equitable, and affordable grid. There's some other, obviously, notable programs that have incentives through the Green Bank and other mechanisms that are already in place and being deployed, such as those from the Green Bank and the such. So all of this to say, we're doing a lot, but it's not quite enough if we live in this island that has these underlying pain points and issues with our grid infrastructure. Something needs to change. Something needs to sort of break and be unlocked in order for us to really see these technologies scale. So what do we do? What are some other sort of silver bullets that we could think of? And this is really where this is, me complaining to you guys. But what other ideas can we have and provide to our legislature, to our utilities, to our executive branch, to our other stakeholders that can really create the unlock that we need? So with that, I'll stop and open it up. Did I do 5 minutes, guys? I don't know.
You're good.
I can't see.
How about cutting through the permitting morass and running some of that cheap hydropower from Quebec down to New England?
I'm with you.
How can you make that happen, though? I mean, we need federal
Yeah.
preemption on on transmission lines.
Yep. I didn't even mention the FERC, right? That's another kind of layer to the cake. Yeah.
Constantine, you mentioned at the top of one of your slides, we need more, I think it was basically deployment acceleration of advanced grid, if I understood the bullet correctly. What are some of the hurdles, meaning opportunities to that, other than the archaic nature of our current grid structure? Regulatory, lack of technologies that fit?
I don't think it's really a lack of technologies. I think there's a lot of really interesting, compelling technologies that have a value prop that utilities need. I think it's sort of the multi-stakeholder issue here that we have of a deregulated, regionalized grid where transmission separated from distribution, where our generation is on a retail type scale. It's difficult to sort of implement distributed energy resources through a permitting type based issue. There's a lot of issues there, and again, I struggle with this. A lot of people struggle with this. I don't think there's any one simple answer. I mean, nobody brought up nuclear, but
What about nuclear?
Yeah, right. So,
Thank you.
all right, good deal.
Constantine.
Thank you very much, guys.
All right, thank you so much, Constantine. Next up, this is one of those issues that, boy, 15, 20 years ago, we never would have thought would have been a big one. And now all of us hoping clean technology, clean energy continues to scale. It's a real challenge. So really excited to welcome to the stage Corrine Bryan from RWE, who is going to talk about how a well-designed renewable energy project can be blocked by community opposition and what to do about it. Corrine, welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. So I'm Corrine Bryan, and I am a Senior Development Manager with RWE Clean Energy. I'm also a former Yale Financing and Deploying Clean Energy student. So today I'll share with you a real-world challenge that we're facing with a utility-scale solar project. So I won't share the exact location and details of the project, but it's based in a very rural county on the East Coast. So I like to call this our perfect project. This is a 200 megawatt solar facility located on 2,000 acres of agricultural and forest land. The nearest residence is 1 mile away from the project, and it's hidden behind 200 feet of trees. So there's a visual buffer around the whole project. So there's no sound, there's no noise. There's no noise, there's no sound, and there's no odor, and there's no visual impact. The only smell that you'll get from this project is from the landfill and the pig farm that are located around the project. So, as well as that, there's lots of community benefits that we'll get from this project, or that the community will get from this project. This would bring $25 billion in revenue to the county, which is one of the poorest in the county. So it really does seem like the perfect project, especially based on the portfolio of projects that I've worked on in nearby areas. Okay, so I don't know, how many developers do we have in the audience today? Can you raise your hand if you're a developer? Thanks. And then keep your hand raised if you've seen any of these, come across any of these kind of comments in your experience as a developer. I think I saw most of those hands remain raised. So community opposition is becoming a real problem for a lot of our projects. It's really challenging. So despite being a kind of perfect project with all of these amazing benefits that it will bring to the county, the comments that we get from the community do really have an impact, especially where you need local permitting. So there's states where you'll need local permitting. There's some states where you just need state level permitting. But for this particular project, we need a local permit. And despite the benefits that I mentioned on the previous page, the county board denied our project their land use permit after a lot of local opposition that came up. So why is this? And I think some of the reasons come up here. So we have here local opposition, for example, which is expected. You know, it's new, especially in rural areas of America. We're a new kind of company coming into the area. It's taking up often a large amount of land. Like we said, this was 2,000 acres. And it's scary, so it's understandable. But the issue comes when we have the opposition that becomes kind of a formal and organized opposition. And then we have locals in this community who actually support the project, and they're vocal about it. You know, we'll door knock and they'll say, oh, yeah, this is great. We need this for our county. But then we have the board of directors that have to listen to these two voices. And often the supporters of the project, which in this case is the majority of the county, based on the door knocking that we've done, they're just too scared to speak up because they're scared of backlash from the opposition. So the county have to kind of go between the loud voices and what might be really beneficial to the county. So after denying our project, the county actually quickly approved an industrial developer for a major new site. They're excited for the new jobs and the tax revenue that this would bring, but there's a problem, which is quite obvious, which we, I guess, tried to explain when we were presenting our project, is that it has everything except reliable electric power. So the incoming development needs 500 megawatts of power, but when they've entered into the queue as a load, they could be waiting up to 7 years to get grid power for this project. So the county is now in a state where they need the new jobs and they need the economic growth. They need that now and not in 7 years' time. So our project could help fill this gap and speed up the economic development in the county, but it's not firm power. So this is where I'll turn to the audience and see if I can get any suggestions or questions or comments. And I'll kind of drill down onto the 4 questions we have up there, which is how could we integrate our solar project into meeting the county's industrial power needs, given the fact that this new development needs firm power? What strategies or partnerships could help us position our revised application as essential for economic and community development? And have you seen any innovative models where renewable industry, local government, and developers have come together successfully to solve a similar problem? And finally, how can we amplify supportive voices in the community and show the board that this project benefits everyone? So I'm eager to hear insights and thoughts and any ideas on how we can unlock the potential of this solar project.
Hey, thank you so much for the great presentation. I'm Coulter. I'm a fellow with the Department of Energy, and I work on siting and permitting, so we see these issues come up a lot. I'm curious what you have heard or what you've seen with community benefit agreements that are starting to provide direct electricity benefits to nearby residents. One of the things that we've started to see in our survey results is that people feel like they're not benefiting directly from these projects, and that they're interested in, reducing their electricity bills through the deployment of these projects. And obviously that's difficult because oftentimes the power is being sold to the grid or through PPAs, but occasionally there's opportunities for developers to do work that's really providing a benefit to the community. So I'm curious, that might be a potential pathway to look into, and I'm curious what you think about the CBAs.
Yeah, that's very interesting and true. A lot of the door knocking that I've done, that's one of the questions, especially if it's in kind of a large state where they're saying, you know, all of the economic growth and the load is like on the north, whereas you're building this project in our area, it's not being used here. So one of the things that we actually did with this project is we decided to invest and partner with an organization called the Dollar Energy Fund. So this is similar to what you're saying. You can set up an agreement with neighbors or neighbors around the project, and you'll kind of contribute to their electricity bill directly. So it's something that we've done for the project. I think we went for maybe a 1.5 mile radius around. Obviously, it's a very rural area, so not many residents. We sent letters out to maybe 50 households, and we had 3 households register. So it might also be a bit about education as well, you know, trying to go out and share that message, but it's definitely something that's out there and worth trying out.
Yeah, I mean, he basically took my question. So just wanted to echo the power of residential solar. But yeah, it seems like it's an issue if there's not a lot of homeowners in the rural area. And then education is a huge piece of that too. But thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm from the state of California, and I do some work around biomethane, biogas, but I also work in agriculture, and I'm from the Central Valley in California, which is a big agricultural hub. And what we're seeing is that a lot of farmers, because of Sigma, which is limiting the amount of water that farmers can now pump in California, a lot of them are finding it more profitable just to sell their land to developers like solar developers. And there is a lot of development right now. But something that that we saw earlier in this conference was agrivoltaics. So this is something that I think about a lot, developing the solar right, but also growing food or maintaining the land at baseline, at least. If that's something that you've been thinking about, if it's feasible for scale, developers that are scaling at the utility level. I know I've seen it. So the innovative example, I've seen it at a smaller scale for sure. In Colorado, there's a lab that does that. Is growing has grapevines, but then they're building the solar above those grapevines, and that's supposed to help with drought, for example. So there is a lot of community benefit to that. Also, the use of water, right? In California, that'd be great to develop solar, but also save the water because we have. That's why Sigma was put in place, and the shade should help some of those crops. So I don't know if that's something feasible, if you're thinking about it. And also aesthetically, it's more pleasing to the eye. I mean, also like there's some examples of grazing. They have animals like grazing under some of the solar panels, and that's really healthy for some of the animals too, and it's healthy for the soil.
Yeah, definitely something RWE have been looking into recently. We have kind of an internal growing group of people across the organization, across different groups that have formed like an agrivoltaics group. So definitely something worth checking out. I know there's like some challenges, like because it's quite new, I guess newer in the US. I know in Europe there's quite a few projects that are kind of in operation that use agrivoltaics.
Karine, thank you so much. And is there an ending to this story?
It's ongoing.
Ongoing. All right. TBD. Well, we're all hoping for the right ending. So best of luck on that project. All right. A great place to end and to bring on our last expert is with the topic of the moment. That's certainly raising a lot of questions, a lot of curiosity, and a lot of interest. So I'd like to welcome Marissa Galizia from Voltus to talk about bring your own capacity, data center growth, and grid resiliency. Welcome, Marissa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marissa Galizia, and I lead partnerships at Voltus, where we aggregate all kinds of distributed energy resources that have flexibility, and we bid that capacity into all 9 of the wholesale markets around North America. And I'm here to talk to you today about the issue of the moment, apparently, where we're seeing just soaring electricity demands coming from data centers and the challenges that that creates for grid operators, utilities, businesses, and consumers, and some ideas of what we can do to solve that. Which button do I press? Oh, they worked. Okay. So we've all heard it before, but AI is coming / it's here. And it seems to have an insatiable need for power. So after decades of seeing reduced demand and lowering prices, we're now seeing both of those go up rapidly. And a lot of the typical solutions that are in discussion, building new gas-fired power plants, co-locating nuclear, all take a long time, 7 years in some cases, as we just heard, and has also been in the news quite a bit. And also, a lot of times those solutions don't address the fact that sometimes the challenge is really that there's not enough capacity on the transmission and distribution lines for adding more generation. So to add to that, oh no. A large part of the problem is that the biggest problems are during just a few hours of peak demand. So it's typically like the 20 to 80 highest hours of the year, of the 8760 hours of the year, where we see that the grid really needs support. And that's usually the hottest days, the coldest days, and 10% of iron in the ground is built to meet that peak demand, which just happens about 1% of the time. So it's super inefficient to continue to build out all of this infrastructure just for those peak hours. So, oh, I'm sorry, I'm really failing with this. Okay. So what is demand response? Demand response is when utilities and grid operators pay energy users for their flexibility to adjust their power use when the grid needs it. And this can be a really efficient solution to helping our grid needs. Yeah, oh, this one. Okay, thank you. So, no. So demand response can be a really important part of this solution. It's available a lot sooner and at lower cost than building new generation. It really keeps dollars in the local communities and can pay local businesses and consumers for their flexibility. And it reduces risk because it's distributed across many different assets, so you don't necessarily have a single point of failure. So there are many aggregators, Voltus is leading among them, which can help recruit flexible energy resources and bid them into these wholesale markets. And that can be, businesses like some of the examples that you see here. It can be batteries, backup generators, anything that can help shift load outside of those peak times. And Voltus has also recently developed a new concept called Bring Your Own Capacity, which allows data centers to directly pay for that flexibility by asking Voltus to go out and recruit businesses and consumers in the areas right around where they're looking to develop those data centers. Voltus can then get that flexible capacity accredited through the wholesale energy markets in ways that are tested and in line with regulatory frameworks that exist today. Transfer those capacity credits to the utilities that need them, and then that can really help the data center interconnect faster, and those local businesses and homes will be there to respond when the grid needs that extra capacity during those peak hours. So the utilities then get that capacity and don't have to rate base it and increase costs for consumers or businesses either. So we have most of what we need available today to make this happen, but there are a few things that would really help to scale. So the first is awareness of currently available options. So just thinking about, not just building new generation, but using these tools that are available today to meet these needs. And then the willingness to try something new.